Hey guys and girls, welcome back to podcast number 2. I'm just going to talk about in this podcast about team and driver performances so far. From my perspective, might not be correct, but this is my perspective so far. Let's start off with Mercedes and Lotus, because they are the main sort of team that I've seen and I've taken note of. They look more solid than they did last year. They have more natural race pace. Well, not race pace. Lotus have good race pace, and Mercedes have good qualifying pace. So they look very strong and refreshed, and they look like they've got a firmer grasp of who they are as a team, more established as race winners rather than being they were always sort of the team that was the 4th or 5th best team. They were never the top team, but they look like they're there now. But the strongest team on the grid for me is Red Bull. They have the best car by far. It's best in qualifying. It's not the best in tyre management, but it's a lot better than the likes of Mercedes, and with their natural race pace they have and balance and everything, it makes a good combination for a very strong car and a lot better than everyone else. Ferrari, I expect better from Ferrari. They have a very good qualifying place along with Mercedes, but something's not right in their race pace. They just, it's 2 corners from the start, and they're not there anymore, and it's strange. Considering they had a car that was stronger in the race and horrible in the qualifying last year. And then there's Mercedes, who can only survive 1 lap or very little with their tyres in the race. And then they're just burnt up. So it's obvious what they need cooler conditions, obviously, to make the tyre last longer and they'll be a lot stronger in the race. But in places where it's hot, it's unlikely that they're going to win. McLaren, Sauber and Williams are the very disappointing teams for me. Their teams are picked out, and I've expected better. I expected Sauber to be a lot more solid team. I expected Williams to be a bit more potential, maybe not up as good, not necessarily winning a race like they did in Spain, but I kind of expected more, and they haven't even scored a point yet this year, so that sort of says it all, really. McLaren, I expected more. They went all into the sport with all this, into this season with a car that had loads of talk about it, especially in testing. Williams had a good car in testing, but so did McLaren, and they've just disappeared. And and it sort of makes you question why have they changed? Why did they even bother changing the car? They sort of fixed the car that had a sort of major race strength problem last year. It couldn't last very long. There seems to be always a problem with its tyres, or there was some understeer or oversteer or balance problems or something. And then they fixed it in the last few races, and they had the strongest car that we sort of knew they had hidden away, because we saw them race in Australia and dominate it last year, and then they just not thought logically and said, right, we've got this car working, and let's keep using it and just update it. And that's what every other team has done, bar from Ferrari, which was understandable because they had to remake the car because the car wasn't necessarily that good in the first place. Sauber, I don't understand why they haven't kept Kobayashi at least, instead of, they haven't got any experience in that team, and they have gone from really, really highs to absolutely really low performances, and it's a lack of experience, really. You've got Hulkenberg, who can be not temperamental, very inconsistent. One moment he's doing very well, the next moment he's not, and it's, if you think what what would the results be if Kobayashi was in that car, or even Jules Bianchi, even, or someone else? And that car might be a bit better. I think the potential of that car hasn't yet been unlocked just yet. I think the car genuinely is good, but yeah, we'll have to see. We'll have to wait and see. It's not. I don't want to judge just yet about how well Sauber could do, because we could come into Spain and all of a sudden they could be really good again, because it's not an awful, dead awful car. So, and then we've got Force India. Force India look like they've taken a huge step forward. I bet Hulkenberg's regretting that move to Sauber from Force India. I think there's a podium possible there if luck runs their way. The Bahrain performance was very strong. If you think maybe if Paul di Resta had a better start, well, he didn't have a terrible start, but he did get stuck behind some traffic, and yeah, you don't know whether he could have been further forward or not. Maybe he might have taken that podium in the end, but they've got a lot of potential there, and they had a good performance in Australia. Maybe they did take a risk, and it sort of half paid off, but they did fade backwards. So towards the end, so yeah, Toro Rosso. Same as last year, really. I think the thing that we need to observe is if they go backwards in the development race towards the second half of the season, because that's where they fell backwards anyway. They started off with a car which was not fast, but could have been a point scorer on a good day. They scored points in Australia on the first race last year, and yeah, I think that's what we need to observe if they go backwards towards the second half of the season. Marussia, they've got the upper hand on Caterham so far. They've got a lot of change. They might have some changes next year. I think they're set to change to Ferrari engines for 2014. So this could make them point scorers next year. Can they? And the question to ask at the moment is, can they challenge Toro Rosso this year? I only think this will happen in mixed conditions during qualifying, and with some luck in the race. I don't think they'll be able to keep up with them in the race. If it's raining in qualifying, and we saw Heikki Kovalainen do it in the Caterham last year, that situation could happen. If they're fortunate and Toro Rosso get caught napping effectively. Caterham, I expected a hell of a lot more this year from them. Their performance is, the car itself, I wouldn't have been surprised if they didn't start scoring points this year, but they keep not bigging themselves up, but they keep making false promises about, we're going to be scoring points next year, and then they don't, and then they say it again, and then they don't, and yeah, I expected more. Let's move on to the drivers now. My points I want to make about drivers: Vettel is doing it again. He's getting the basics right. He's doing it again. That's what he always does. I think that's probably one of his best strengths. He's not necessarily, they always say he's a qualifying master, but he just doesn't make a mistake. That's the main strength of his ability. He's getting the basics right. He's setting the car up and the way he wants it. His teammate Mark, he's close. Can be close on his tail. He tends to make a mistake in qualifying and it lets him down, and it loses 2/10, which could have been the pole lap in qualifying. So he's not really making it work for himself, and so it's just sort of disappointing. The whole hurrah we had at Malaysia as well. Between the two, it's not over yet. We'll see something happen where there'll be a team order, maybe, or something, and then there'll be a sort of big rift again. and so we'll see some more issues. Maybe even a coming together, another accident on track, possibly. Let's go to Massa now. He started okay. He sort of had the momentum from last year because he beat Alonso in the last 3 or 4 races. Or out-qualified him, I think, or something like that. But he only looks good in qualifying. His race place, he just goes backwards. Alonso, on the other hand, he's similar. Not as good as qualifying, but stronger in the race. And he made that costly mistake in Malaysia, which was really odd. I don't understand why he did that. The car was clearly broken, but he decided to continue with the risk. But he should have pitted, really. We all know that. Kimi Raikkonen, he looks strong and settled in now. He's making Grosjean look really bad. When we saw Romon last year, quick at times during qualifying, but my gut sort of says, was that the car really that made him that quick? Because it was a good car. It wasn't the best, but it was a very good car. So I think he's gonna flop. Really, well, not flop. He's probably just gonna do average jobs this year, each race, and Kimi Raikkonen's gonna beat him, and his future's gonna be in doubt. And I think he's gonna go at the end of this year. I don't think Lotus will want to waste any more time on that. They need a driver that's going to win, and a possible replacement, I don't know who that could be, but that's my theory. So we've got the other two teammates at Mercedes, Nico Rosberg and Hamilton, which is different than Rosberg. To me, is better than Hamilton, maybe just about. He's quicker in practice 1, 2, and 3, and well, practices they're trading lap times. And then we come to qualifying, and he pips him in qualifying 1 and 2, and then when Rosberg needs to make it happen, he doesn't, and Lewis pulls the quick lap time out of the bag. He's actually performing really well for me, and he's matching Hamilton and perfectly capable of beating him. I think Lewis has settled well with the Mercedes team now, and he's got the car working hard, which is sort of which was predictable, because that's how he has that hard style driving, makes the car work. And we saw him in 2009 with the bad car. He drove the wheels off it and managed to win in it. So he's doing the same in the Mercedes now. So if Mercedes can, I'm not necessarily saying the Mercedes is a bad car, but if Mercedes can get their act together, there may well be challenges for the main challenges for Red Bull in the Constructors' Championship and the Drivers' Championship. We've got Di Resta impressing me now. I think Sutil came into the sport and we all thought, is he going to be able to do it again? Is he going to be able to be as fit, as sharp after such a long time out? There's question marks, and he performed very well in Australia because they took a risk in it, and they took a risk, and I think Di Resta's sort of gone, hang on a minute, I'm not having this. I've been at this team for 2 seasons, is it? 2011, 2012, yeah, 2 seasons. He did some testing in 2010, I think, in Canada, but as a race driver for them, he's driven for 2 years now, and he's gone, I'm not having this. And he's trying to prove Sutil who is boss, and he looks better and more solid, and he has a different attitude to him now. And I think he's also a bit miffed about missing out on the McLaren seat and not having a top drive for a top team, and it's riled him up. He's a top talent, and I've always thought that. He's better than Hulkenberg, who is doing okay at Sauber. He's sort of up and down. I've never really rated Hulkenberg that much, to be honest. He's very inconsistent. Yeah. So one moment you think, oh, he's really quick. The next minute you go, oh, well, what is he doing? That's not really up to scratch on our expectations. But what can happen this year for him, I don't know. It's too early to judge how things will fall into place with the Sauber, because I don't think we've quite seen the best of it yet, even though it's been very poor. Gutierrez, on the other hand, is having a torrid time. He's obviously got Mexican Oil sponsoring him, who sponsored Perez last year, and he's obviously got a lot of money coming into funding him, and it makes you think, if he didn't have that money, though, obviously Kobayashi would have been there, but is he good enough? He has to step up his game a lot. He's really, really disappointed a lot of me in particular, and I expected more. Not necessarily strong, and it's a risk that Sauber hasn't paid off. And I sort of picked up this opinion of him early on, because when I was browsing autosport.com, there was a headline that said he's going to be cautious in the first race, and I was like, you don't have time to be cautious. You've got to go into it. You've got to be in it to win it. And whether he's got that sort of mentality if he had that mentality for Malaysia and Bahrain and China, you've got to think. I don't think he did. I think he's still trying. I think he said somewhere he's only here to try and learn in his first season, and he's not up to. Well, he's not trying to prove that he's the next Perez or he's better than Perez. He's not trying to look at those sort of statistics that Perez achieved last year and try and beat them or match them, which he should be. And not just him. He should also be beating the other people around him as well. And that's his target. Should be beating others and not trying to, figure things out. Otherwise, he's just going to be caught napping. And then we've got Maldonado and Bottas, who were both struggling with their car. I like Bottas as a driver. I think I thought that there was a lot of hype about him before he came in through testing. He posted quick lap times in testing, and whether or not he's better than Maldonado, I don't know. I think with the struggling car, you can't make a judgment yet. Even though he is ahead in the standings, I think it's mainly because he's kept his nose clean, and Maldonado hasn't, and it's that's why he's beating him in the standings. It's a shame really that both drivers haven't got any points on the board yet for the team. We thought we saw the revival of Williams coming, and I would have understood if maybe that they weren't quite as quick as they were in 2012, but there's still something that's not right But there is major upgrades apparently coming for Spain, so we'll see. Ricardo in the Toro, so he looks more complete this year. He looks a lot fitter, looks more settled down and more solid. And I think he's sort of leaving Vern behind. And Vern's got some catching up to do, really. Bianchi in the Marussia looks a real star. We obviously know that he's outperforming that Marussia because it's not necessarily I can't say that word. It's not a very good car, really. It's not a point score, is what I mean. But the thing that surprises me is his teammate Max. I thought he was just a kid with a big bank balance, and his father has some authority up in the motorsport world. I'm not sure what precisely it's called. I think it's somewhat thing in Britain. So obviously he's got must have had some good references, but he never had a good he hasn't got a very good trophy cabinet, and it doesn't necessarily show that he's a very good driver because he hasn't achieved much. But even though he's not beating Bianchi, he's very close in the time charts and qualifying, and this sort of suggests to me that he's not as bad as I thought he was going to be. I thought he was going to be miles off. We've got the Spanish Grand Prix coming up next at the end of this weekend. I hope you'll enjoy it. We need to look out for Mercedes and Williams because apparently they've got some big upgrades, and so have McLaren. They are bigging up. So I'm looking forward to see that. Before I go, I want to leave you with a question that's sort of been pondering my mind, really, pondering around, and it was more of an idea that one of the main problems, well, not problems, but the thing that we obviously get bored of in Formula 1 is seeing the same winner over and over again. And we were very fortunate last year to have 7 different winners in the 7 races at the start of the season. And my idea was, why don't we introduce like ballast changes and weight changes like they have in touring cars? And touring cars is obviously very successful. I don't want Formula 1 to become the next touring cars and have everyone barging everyone off and so on. But it was an idea, and then it could mix up. Maybe then we could see a more varied chance to have a winner, and then we could have more varies in having the opportunity for others to win. And it's not just so we can stop Vettel from winning all the time, but it's more the fact that we could give teams like maybe Force India an opportunity to get a podium every now and then. So that's my question. So if you agree with the idea of having ballast changes to the winner of the previous race or whoever's leading the championship, leave your comments below, or future, if you agree or not, or what you would like to see to change in Formula 1. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and I'll see you later. Have a good weekend and enjoy the race. See ya. Bye.